Thanksgiving weekend 2008, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons stormed through the Anaheim Classic, led by a breakout performance from sophomore guard Jeff Teague. They defeat Baylor in the title game, and Wake Forest is crowned the champion. Let's check Real GM to see. Wait. What does that say? Real GM lists Wake Forest sophomore Jeff Teague as the tournament MVP, and on a second look, the website Fandom says the same thing, Jeff Teague, MVP. Now, some of you may remember this, but on the Club 520 podcast earlier this year, Jeff Teague talks about how he averaged 26 and won the 2008 Anaheim Classic, and he was still kinda mad because they had to call James Harden out of the crowd to accept the MVP award. Teague says Harden won the award. Why do multiple online sources say it was Teague Time in 08 when the man himself says that it wasn't? This story is a microcosm for a career of the guy who has played a role in some of the most iconic moments in modern NBA culture. He's a man whose presence has been woven in and out of basketball history more times than I think any of us realized when he was playing. Today, we will attempt to chronicle one of the most quietly impactful careers of the 21st century. To put it simply, it's Teague time. Before we move on to the big leagues, we do need to finish this story about the tournament MVP. I began searching for any kind of proof that James Harden won that award. There was really little to be found. It became a witch hunt of Wayback Machine, Wikipedia edit logs, and newspaper.com searches. The tournament is now defunct, but eventually I came upon what seems to be a legitimate document from ESPN that goes over the history of the Anaheim Classic, which became the Wooden Classic. While Jeff Teague did make the all-tournament team, James Harden of Arizona State won the Most Outstanding Player in 2008. Now here's a question we haven't asked, but I think is just as important. Did Jeff Teague deserve this tournament MVP? Well, the packet goes over some tournament records as well. Let me read them off. Most points in a game with 40, James Harden. Most points in a half with 21, James Harden. Single tournament scoring record, 87 points over 3 games, James Harden, 2008. Unfortunately, Jeff Teague went 1 for 10 from the field in the championship game and ended up averaging 22 on the tournament. And the recency bias of Harden dropping a 40-burger in the third place game absolutely did him dirty. While I don't know for certain why some outlets list Jeff Teague as the MVP, I can say for certain that James Harden did have a very legitimate claim to it. A month later, Teague dropped 34 on UNC, and the next week, Wake Forest was ranked number 1 in the nation. Jeff Teague was officially on the NBA radar. We start to see him in media more often, sometimes getting profiled by the local paper. Academics hasn't declared yet as a sophomore. Up next, professional basketball. There's no doubt about that. As a side note, Jeff's younger brother Marcus has drawn interest from major programs by this point and was ranked number 2 in the nations on Rivals.com. The Demon Deacons finished the 2009 season with a record of 24-6 and earned a 4 seed in March Madness. Teague and James Johnson were voted 2nd and 3rd team All-ACC respectively. They seemed poised for a deep run in the tournament. This did not happen. They lost by 15 in the first round to Cleveland State, led by sophomore guard Norris Cole.
With the 19th pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, the Atlanta Hawks select Jeff Teague from Wake Forest University.
In Jeff Teague's professional debut on October 28, 2009, he plays almost 14 minutes, scoring 5 points on 2 of 7 shooting with 3 boards and 4 assists. To quote Steve Hummer of the Atlanta Constitution, Hawks head coach Mike Woodson had about as much use for a rookie point guard as he did a blow dryer. Mike Woodson was a very bald man. Teague averaged 10 minutes a game behind Mike Bibby. He didn't see the court a ton, but the crux of the story is that Jeff Teague was always there. He either had a hand in or was in the background for some of the most famous moments in recent basketball culture, and on January 1st, 2010, Jeff Teague was around for the first Teague time moment. After being DNP'd for 13 straight games, Nate Robinson forced Mike D'Antoni to keep him in the damn game. He put the team on his back and dropped 41 off the bench on 75% shooting to beat the Hawks in overtime in Atlanta. It's a crowning achievement for one of the best 6 men in recent history. Jeff Teague played 4 minutes in the second quarter and never checked back in. Teague time was brief, but he was there, and it happened. Teague wouldn't play over 22 minutes in a game until the final game of the season, when the Hawks rested their starters and Woodson decided to play Teague for all 48 minutes. He may have actually hated Teague, I'm not sure. The Hawks would make the playoffs and beat the Bucks in the first round, then got swept by Dwight Howard's Magic. The Hawks fired Woodson and hired Larry Drew as their new head coach. Entering year 2, Teague was expected to take on a larger role, although his usage remained about the same. However, regardless of whether or not he was in the game, Teague will find a way to instigate. This brings us to February 12, 2011, at home versus the Bobcats. Teague did not play a single second of this game, but yet this is Teague time moment number 2. Tie game with 5 seconds left. Eduardo Nahra inbounds the ball to Steven Jackson on the wing. Jeff Teague, who is standing and still wearing his warm-ups, yells, and I quote, "Mo! Lock that shit up, man. Also, to quote Jeff Teague, jab, jab, one dribble, game. This was Steven Jackson's only career game winner, and Teague instigated it. The Hawks would finish the season 44-38 and face the team that swept them last year, the Magic. The Hawks beat them in 6 games, but with a pretty significant loss. Kirk Heinrich, who averaged 28 minutes a game in the regular season and was known as the head of their defense, went down with a knee sprain with minutes to go in the clinching game. This left a Jeff Teague-sized hole in the Atlanta Hawks lineup for the semifinals versus the Chicago Bulls. Who was the point guard on the 2011 Chicago Bulls that Jeff Teague would match out? Jeff Teague went from playing 8 minutes total versus the Magic to starting every game and having to guard MVP Derrick Rose for 38 minutes every third night. This was Jeff Teague's moment to break out on a national stage, and for the impossible task that was asked of him, he did a darn good job. Rose averaged 30, 4, and 10, and the Bulls won in 6, but Teague made a name for himself and solidified himself as the starting point guard for the Hawks. From the front page of newspapers to shout out from the league MVP in post-game interviews, it was officially Teague Time in Atlanta. And there's a work stoppage. While Marcus Teague was beginning his freshman season at Kentucky, Jeff and the Hawks were waiting for a new CBA, which arrived in December 2011. 66 games would be played in the shortened season, and 66 games Jeff Teague started for the Hawks. Increased minutes led to career highs in virtually every category, and the Hawks entered the playoffs as a 5 seed to face the Boston Celtics in the first round. They would lose this series in 6 games, but it gives us a chance to talk about something very important: flagrant fouls. In Game 6, down 35 in the third quarter, Jeff Teague commits the first flagrant foul of his career. From what play-by-play data tells me, Avery Bradley gets a steal from Teague that leads to points, then 2 possessions later, Bradley gets a run out and Teague fouls the shit out of him while he was going up on the other end. This is the archetype for the Jeff Teague flagrant foul. Teague commits a turnover and then just fouls the shit out of the defender when he goes for a layup. He has about 1 per season for the next 6 years. We're going to be going over all of them as we come across them. Congrats to Marcus Teague and the Kentucky Wildcats for winning the NCAA championship. Mook would be drafted 29th overall to the Bulls in the offseason. The next season would be really fruitful for Teague, who played 80 games and again posted career highs in points and assists. He would also commit his second flagrant foul against the Suns. Teague turns the ball over, then he fouls the shit out of the guy who stole it on the other end. This time it's Marcus Morris. The Hawks entered the playoffs that year as a 6 seed and lost to the Pacers in 6 games. The 2013-14 season again saw Teague start almost 80 games, continuing to solidify himself as the starting point guard. He scored a career-high 34 points and hit the game winner on December 27th versus the Cavs. A couple days earlier, he watched Paul Millsap get postered by the King and gave us one of the funniest stop-and-stare moments you'll ever see in a basketball game. A few months later, the NBA world saw the 4th and final matchup between brothers Marcus and Jeff Teague on a professional stage. We get Teague Time moments number 3 and 4 in this game. Number 3, Jeff crossed the shit out of Marcus on a fast break but sold the layup. And number 4, we get this Paul Pierce quote.
Paul Pierce trying to check in for Kevin Garnett.
I don't know what inspired him to say all of this, but he's a wordsmith. On February 11th, 2014, while fighting for an offensive rebound, Teague pulled Taj Gibson to the ground and was assessed a flagrant 1 foul. This is the 3rd flagrant of Jeff Teague's career. The Hawks would squeak into the playoffs as the 8 seed and take on the mighty Pacers again in the first round. Most thought this series was an afterthought, but Teague and the Hawks made it a series. They took the Eastern Conference win leader to 7 games, and Jeff Teague continued to make a name for himself in the playoffs. The 14-15 season was a big one for both Jeff and the Hawks. In Coach Bud's second season in Atlanta, the Hawks lit the league on fire with a franchise record 60 wins. Unlike some of their rivals, they didn't have any superstar max deal talent on their roster, and they were rewarded with 4 All-Star selections, one of them being Jeff Teague, the January NBA Player of the Month. In the All-Star game, Teague scored 14 points in 13 minutes, with 2 assists and 2 steals, and going 2 for 2 from 3. He could always get some shots up. He committed 2 flagrant fouls in his All-Star season. On November 26th, with 3 minutes left in a close game versus the Raptors, Lou Williams stole the ball and Teague fouled the shit out of him on the other end. The second of the season came in Game 3 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, in the same game where Paul Pierce would proclaim,
I call all game.
Bradley Beal would steal the ball, and Jeff Teague would smack the shit out of him on the other end. It was assessed a flagrant foul 1 after review. This is his 5th career flagrant foul. The Hawks would beat the Wizards in 6 in advance, but unfortunately, Jeff Teague was about to have his first meaningful meeting with LeBron James. In Game 2 of the series with Teague on the bench, LeBron would give us one of the greatest sound bites of all time.
Come on, man! That's too easy!
The 60-22 Hawks would be swept, with Atlanta scoring under 90 points in 3 of their 4 contests. In 15-16, our annual flagrant foul came early. In a game versus the Timberwolves, Teague kind of just reached up and punched Serbian forward Nemanja Bjelica in the face. The refs missed it at the time, but it would be assessed a flagrant 2 a couple days later. This is his 6th career flagrant foul. You know, when it rains, it pours. This is not the last time we would see Freaky Jeff in 2015-16. The Hawks made the playoffs again, this time as the 4 seed, and they managed to defeat the Celtics in the first round. They then faced the 2016 Cavs in the second round. Those basketball history majors out there may remember how this series went. In Game 2, the Cavaliers set the single-game three-point record, regular season or postseason, making 25 threes on 55% shooting. They had doubled up the Hawks at half. This unleashed a fire within Jeffrey DeMarco Teague, a fire that could only be satisfied by one thing and one thing only. This is Teague Time moment number 5. Down 11 with 30 seconds left in Game 3 of the semifinals, Jeff Teague misses a layup and the ball ends up in who? LeBron James's hands. He dribbles through traffic a little bit. Oh, Jeff, what are you doing? You just shoved the king, and for no good reason either. I'm sure he received death threats for this one. This is his 7th career flagrant foul. The Hawks would lose by 30, and in Game 4 be swept out of the playoffs by LeBron for the 2nd year in a row. It was becoming apparent in Atlanta that Teague Time was coming to an end. On July 17, 2016, in a trade that sent George Hill to the Jazz, the Hawks sent Jeff Teague to the Indiana Pacers in exchange for Taurean Prince in a 3-team trade. Teague averaged 15, 4, and 8, and had a solid season as their starting point guard. But his most historically impactful moment in a Pacers uniform came off a blown coverage. This is number 6. In a December game at Oracle Arena, Teague lets Steph Curry leak out behind him, who tosses a no-look lob to Kevin Durant for the jam, no dribbles involved. This might be the most defining highlight of the Durant-era Warriors, and it was arguably Jeff Teague's fault. God, he really was everywhere. Pacers would make the playoffs, face the Cavs in the first round, and for the 3rd year in a row, Jeff Teague would be swept out of the playoffs by LeBron James. This would be Jeff's final playoff series against LeBron. He retired with a career playoff record of 0-12 versus the King. Jeff's rookie extension was up, and who would come knocking but the Minnesota Timberwolves, offering a 3-year, $57 million contract that Jeff couldn't pass up. Little did any of us know that Teague Time would be on full display in Minneapolis. Teague Time number 7 would come in a January 2018 game versus DeMarcus Cousins and the Pelicans. Jeff was on the bench with an MCL sprain, and once again he would instigate from the bench. Jeff yelled, "Cat! Bust his ass!" And the result is one of the greatest pictures in Timberwolves, Pelicans, and NBA history, with Boogie Cousins staring directly at the instigator, Jeff Teague. Fox Sports tells me that Jeff Teague accrued 3 flagrant fouls in his first year in Minnesota. I, for the life of me, could only find 2 given the resources available, so we will go over those, and if you can find the missing one, please let me know. On October 7th versus the Cavs, Jay Crowder stole the ball as Teague was coming up the court, and Jeff gave him the old Teague special and shoved the shit out of him. Teague would be assessed a tech and a flagrant 1, but was not ejected. This would be Jeff Teague's 8th career flagrant foul. It was fortunate that he wasn't ejected, because it meant Teague was on the court for one of the most iconic game winners of LeBron's career, at least in my eyes. I looked it up. Teague would finish his career 5-33 overall against teams with LeBron on them. I'm sure others have had worse records, but that is rough. A month later, Teague committed what was perhaps his most famous regular season flagrant foul. With 5 minutes left in the 4th in Utah, Jeff Teague misses a 9-foot jumper, and then absolutely rocks the Ricky Rubio while he's running up the court. Teague would be assessed a tech, a flagrant 2, and would be ejected from the game for the first time in his professional career. Something about that hip check must have knocked something into place, because this is Jeff Teague's 9th and final career flagrant foul. Now that we've concluded concluded that saga, I'd like to present Jeff Teague's all-flagrant foul team. Starting at the 1, we have Ricky Rubio, of course. At the 2, we have Bradley Beal. At the 3, we have the king, LeBron James. Starting at power forward, we've got Marcus Morris, and holding down the paint, we've got Taj Gibson. Our 6th man is Lou Williams, of course. That's a really solid lineup. Something about 2018 in Minneapolis brought out a fire in Jeff Teague. If you stole the ball from him and you're driving towards the opposite basket, there's a good chance he's fouling the shit out of you. If he missed a shot and you were dribbling towards your basket, there's a good chance he's gonna foul the shit out of you. But if you need a bucket with the season and the playoffs on the line, there's a good chance the ball is gonna end up in Jeff Teague's hands. In Game 82 versus the Nuggets, the Timberwolves needed a win to make the playoffs for the first time in 14 years. The game went to overtime, and they were down 1 with 1:43 to go. Minnesota would play hot potato for 20 seconds, and the ball landed with Teague with 2 seconds left on the shot clock. Denver would never retake the lead. Jeff Teague, the man who led the team in flagrants, the man who hip-checked their former fan-favorite point guard into oblivion. He was the man who hit the shot that sent the Timberwolves to the playoffs for the first time in 14 years. While they would lose in the first round, the impact of the T-Wolves making the playoffs was very tangible, especially to one particular man on the team. This man decided that it was time for the team to reap what they sowed and pay him. Jimmy Butler was a big part of why Minnesota made it back to the postseason, and on October 10th, 2018, Jimmy Butler walked into the Minnesota gym, picked the G-Leaguers as his teammates, and beat the starters in a scrimmage, including Jeff Teague. A few hours later, Jimmy told us, the world, and Rachel Nichols about what happened that day. I strongly recommend you go see Jeff Teague's perspective and his telling of the story, right now, and then come back to this video. It is cinematic. Anyways, Jimmy Butler was traded, and a new season began in Minneapolis. Teague would begin to wind down, playing only 41 games due to various injuries. His scoring dipped to 12 points per game, but he averaged a career-high 8 assists on the season. In January, he got a double tech and was ejected for shoving Dennis Schroeder. And while technically not a flagrant, that's as close as we're gonna get. His season ended in March after a lingering foot issue put him in a walking boot. This would be his first non-lockout year playing under 70 games. Even before the season was over, the Minnesota media was speculating that Teague had played his final game in a Wolves jersey. They were wrong, but they weren't far off. The Timberwolves started the season with Teague as their starting point guard, but it didn't take long for Shabazz Napier and Jarrett Culver to start taking his spot. By December, Teague was entirely coming off the bench, and in January, he was traded back to Atlanta for Allen Crabbe. In his first game back with the Hawks, he passed Steve Smith for 19th all-time in scoring for the Hawks franchise. He now sits at 20th because of Trae Young. The rest of the 2020 season went as planned. On March 11th, after news had broken that the season would be suspended indefinitely, there were still games in progress and they did need to be finished. The Knicks at Hawks was one of these games. With 19 seconds left on the clock in overtime, 43-year-old Vince Carter walks past Jeff Teague and checks in for the last time in his career. The Hawks would not be invited to the bubble, and Jeff Teague became an intriguing option as backcourt depth to a plethora of teams around the league. In the end, he would end up signing with the Boston Celtics, officially beginning the veteran era of Teague Time. He played 25 minutes in the opener, but rarely saw minutes like that again. He played 34 games for Boston until they shipped him out to the Orlando Magic for Evan Fournier in a pick swap. To hear Teague tell it, the Magic told him that he wouldn't play a single minute if he decided to stay. He chose to get waived and get paid twice. If anyone can send me proof of them going Teague Time in an Orlando Magic Jeff Teague jersey, I will personally Venmo you $30. That's my price. After a 3-day stint in Orlando, he was waived and signed by the Bucks. Turns out this is the best decision he could have possibly made. He averaged 15 minutes for the rest of the season, and with Dante DiVincenzo's foot injury keeping him out of the playoffs, Teague had a small playoff role cut out for him after sticking up for his teammate Thanasis Antetokounmpo. On June 6th, we get the immortal quote from Kevin Durant, "You win the game, Teague!" In the clinching Game 6 of the 2021 NBA Finals, he played a minute 43 in the second quarter and had a plus-minus of -5. After the win, Jeff Teague hopped in his pickup truck, drove from Milwaukee to his home in Indianapolis, and hopped on 2K as an NBA champion for the first time.